which you would love to hear. This next song is responsive. As per the usual Catholic mash, someone says something, you affirm it. In this case, I'm going to let you affirm or deny it. You are going to say, you can respond probably or probably not. That's your response. Okay? And it's real theological work that you'll be doing. Okay? So get with it. Here we go. Well, I've traveled far and wide, cross hills and countryside, to answer the questions troubling me. And one day, out of the blue, I realized I knew. And the answer was as simple as can be. Again, it's probably or probably not. Is there a God above? Is there eternal love? Probably not. Probably not. Is there a home up in the sky? Will we be there by and by? Probably not. No, probably not. Think of that Easter day when they rolled the stone away and the apostles said they'd seen Jesus by the city wall. And St. Thomas' heart was pure when he said, oh right, yeah, sure. That's why St. Thomas is the grooviest apostle of all. Is there a God above? Is there eternal love? Probably not. Or probably not. Is there a home up in the sky? Will we be there by and by? Probably not. No, probably not. But what if I've been wrong and God's been up there all along? And he hands me a heavenly crown. Would I dare to turn him down? Probably not. Probably not. And if he sends me down to hell, will I smile and say, oh well, probably not. No, probably not. Is there a God above? Is there eternal love? Probably not. Probably not. Is there a home up in the sky? Will we be there by and by? Probably not. No, probably not. Probably not. No, probably not. Amen. Problem with singing before a sermon is I keep singing instead of droll on. But this is about poetry, which is very exciting. And some of you do have poetry hidden inside the flap of your hymnals. Maybe you brought poetry today, or maybe it is hidden in your hymnal. Either way, you can share those and read them aloud at the end of the sermon. I love to hear them. Or you can just pass it to your neighbor if you want them to read it aloud. I begin with a poem by E. Cummings. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees and a blue true dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. I who have died am alive again today, and this is the sun's birthday. This is the birthday of life and love and wings, and of the gay, great happening, illimitably earth. How should tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, breathing, any lifted from the know of all nothing human merely being, doubt unimaginable you? Now the ears of my ears awake, and now the eyes of my eyes are opened. Amen. A spokesperson for the National Poetry Foundation, Curtis Fox, says, we brush with prose, but do not often floss with poetry. Poetry perhaps requires a level of concentration unlike prose. Mr. Fox set up an experiment with a non-poetry friend, sending her a poem a day to see if she would get in a poetry habit. In response, she wrote him this: "A poem is as hard to like as a person. It has traits and charms, and when you think you're comfortable with it, it makes a sharp turn." This fairly famous poem by E.E. Cummings, for example, begins with the lovely lines, "Thank you, God, for this amazing day, for leaping greenly spirits of trees." And this beginning references God, but any humanist can absorb the beauty of its lines. But in the end, Cummings devotes a paragraph asserting our lowliness and God's undoubted existence. We could spend this hour talking about the 14 lines of the poem, ultimately coming to no consensus on who God is. Not a bad day's work for Unitarians. But poems hold within them some intensity because it offers as much as a whole person. A poem, like a person, offers itself to us, and we can decide whether to spend more time with it or not. Thanks to Poetry Foundation for helping me track this winding path of poetry. It started out as a means to share things, historic events, traditions, in a society that had no written words. Praises and prayers to the gods, tributes to heroes, lists of things that we knew are true, recipes for magic charms, lamentations for the dead. It was discovered that by combining and alternating words with similar sounds, we create rhythm and rhyme, thus making the subject more compelling and more memorable. The rhythmic nature of this kind of language translated to music so well. And early poems were sung and accompanied by musicians. This poetry is known as lyric, meaning words sung to a lyre or a harp. The ancient Greeks are credited with giving us this poetry that we have today. They in fact coined the term poem, which means something made. Around 750 BCE, the composition of a poem with music turned into composition of a poem spoken with no music. The same horizontal lines used to organize the lyrics, the words, these were known as verses. Socrates reasoned that poetry is created when the gods remove from us all our senses and replace them with divine inspiration. To be inspired means to be divinely filled with breath. Inspired, expired, inspired. The 9 daughters of Zeus, the Muses, gave us the source of all this inspired knowledge. Thus, it was customary for the poet to beg forgiveness or beg help from the Muses in the writing process. In the spirit of imagining poetry as lyrical or musical, I will read excerpts from different points along the poetic timeline, listening for the sound as much as for the content. This first is from the Greek tragedy Electra, written by Euripides. Alas, we look for good on earth and cannot recognize it when met, since all our human heritage runs mongrel. At times I have seen descendants of the noblest family grow worthless, though the cowards had courageous sons. Inside the souls of wealthy men bleak famine lives, while minds of stature struggle trapped in starving bodies. How then can man distinguish man? What test can he use? We can only toss our judgments random on the wind. Theology shifted from polytheism, many gods, to monotheism, one God. The Muses that we begged for inspiration became the Lord. Augustine, a missionary sent by Rome, started spreading Christianity to Europe. From his City of God, we have this. A great work this and arduous, but God is my helper. For I am aware what ability is requisite to persuade the proud. How great is the virtue of humility, which raises us not by a quite human arrogance, but by a divine grace, above all earthly dignities that totter on this shifting scene. God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Show pity to the humbled soul, and crush the sons of pride. All this was composed in Latin until Geoffrey Chaucer did away with this formality when he composed his works in the everyday language of Middle English. It was shocking to use one's native tongue to compose poetry, but this became widespread because his Canterbury Tales became so popular. This from Chaucer's poem, A Ballad of Gentleness. The first stock father of gentleness, what man desireth gentle for to be, must follow his trace, and all his wits dress, virtue to love and vices for to flee. For unto virtue longeth dignity, and not the reverse. Safely dare I deem all can wear the mitre, crown, or diadem. The thematic content widened with the invention of the printing press. We're just moving through. We're 15th century now. This ushered in an interest in everyday people. God and Christian morality was there, but this God-centered nature of poetry evolved into an earthly, grounded art. Inspiration was a God-given gift, but Renaissance poets credit themselves as the final creator. A title once held by God. Romantics, forget about it. The poet was not only the creator, but the source of inspiration. The quality of his imagination was paramount. Poets had maintained an emotional distance, never revealing their true feelings. Now the poet's center stage, all his hopes, joys, sorrows on the page. From Keats, A Draught of Sunshine. Aye, when the soul is fled too high above our head, affrighted we gaze after its airy maze, as doth a mother wild when her young infant child is in an eagle's claw. And is not this the case of madness? God of song, thou bearest me along, through sights I scarce can bear. Oh, let me share with the hot lyre and thee. Later we have poets with more conversational tone. Traditional forms cast off. Poetry had had a rhythm and a rhyme. Then in 1848, the American poet Walt Whitman published his collection Leaves of Grass. Free verse. This did away with any construction of rhythms, relying on an organic rhythm of our speech every day. And that would create musicality. This from Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Spontaneous me, nature, the loving day, the mounting sun, the friend I am happy with, the arm of my friend hanging idly over my shoulder, the hillside whitened with blossoms of the mountain ash. That same, later in autumn, the hues of red, yellow, drab, purple, light and dark green, the rich coverlid of the grass. Poets like Whitman began to experiment and became as flexible and bending as ever the Greeks could be. Tristan Tzara in the 20s, E. Cummings in the 30s and 40s, pushed free verse to limits it didn't even know it had. It was already free. They invented new words and strange configurations of verse. This one's not strange, but it's so pretty I'm going to read it. From E. Cummings, I Carry Your Heart With Me. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Here is the root of the root, and the bud of the bud, and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than the soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that's keeping the stars apart. From the vast melodrama of sweeping mythological tales in Greek drama to the deepest secret of E. Cummings, I note this contrast between distance, different kinds of distances. Greek spoke of love and pain in the guise of large archetypes, usually with spears, in war. Now the spiritual realm of the poet would speak of love through the smallest memory. If I were to admire you sitting there in the light, would I compare you to Zeus blazing in his temple, or would I notice the red button on your coat and how the last thing you did before you left was fasten it, and how I can't get the memory of that little thing out of my head? That was kind of a poem. There is great literature that has both large and small. Hebrew scriptures and the Psalms describe a culture on the verge of extermination, but at the same time the poetry feels very personal. Shakespeare shifts between two spirit worlds of the personal and universal. All his words hit me as personally and universally at the same time. In Romeo and Juliet, Juliet has not heard Romeo speak but a few lines from her balcony. And then she says this: "My ears have not yet drunk 100 words of that tongue's utterance, yet I know the sound." Poetry, and drama, and art. These are forms that attempt to represent us, our lives. A drama teacher I had once said that whatever crazy and dramatic character is on the stage and whatever important words they try to say, the lives of us, the people in the audience, are far more interesting. The true drama and pain of our world is very deep. In a justice-oriented time, like the time we memorialize our continuing racial struggles, we might search for words that can hold the meaning of a life of Dr. Martin Luther King, for example. Life can be so beautiful and tragic, and comic, and. Poetry is an attempt to understand all that we live, what we feel, what we talk about, what we don't. Poetry is able to contain the intensity that our life holds and drama that our relationships contain. When I say that something's poetic, for example, for me it means that it took me to a place I didn't think possible, but at the same time, a place I somehow know very well and I'm intimate with. Our being with each other, our congregation, our family, can be this, a familiar place that holds some unknowing, a place of thinking, dreaming, and vision. I heard a wonderful quote the other day from a scientist. Instead of labeling us Homo sapiens, humans who know, the label should read Homo spiritual. And that sounds like a poem, if I ever heard one. We move into reading poems outright, poems you brought, poems you found in your hymnal. I start with 3 one-liners. The earth laughs in flowers. Here's one from Mary Molino called The Assassination. He had to be shot before he told the whole world about how the... And the third one from Gregory Mironick. Beer's gone, wine's gone, it's you and me again. Poetry's all over the place. So let's hear you read. You can stand from your chair or sit from your chair, and we'll listen to the sounds of your poem that you might have brought. Oh, you know what? Why don't you just give us a hand and I can just point to you so we don't have overlap?
Go ahead. Well, I won't read the whole thing, but I love Dylan Thomas. And one of my favorites since for many years has been Fern Hill. Are you familiar? Now as I was young and easy under the apple boughs, about the lilting house and happy as the grass was green, the night above the dingle starry, time let me hail and climb golden in the heydays of his eyes. And honored among wagons, I was prince of the apple towns. And once, below a time, I lordly had the trees and leaves trail with daisies and barley down the rivers of the windfall light. And as I was green and carefree, famous among the barns about the happy yard, and singing as the farm was home, in the sun that is young once only, time let me play and be golden in the mercy of his means. And green and golden, I was huntsman and herdsman, the calves sang to my horn, the foxes on the hills barked clear and cold, and the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy streams. I'll go to the last verse, okay? Nothing I cared in the lamb-white days that time would take me up to the swallow-thronged loft by the shadow of my hand in the moon that is always rising, nor that riding to sleep I should hear him fly with the high fields and wake to the farm forever fled from the childless land. Oh, I was young and easy in the mercy of his means. Time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea.
When did you first read that?
Gosh, I don't know, 15, maybe 16. I even did a PowerPoint once to it. Got pictures of horses and all that stuff.
I have a poem, I'm reading a poem that was stuck in my hymnal, and it's also by Dylan Thomas, so I thought this would be an appropriate time. And I read it a couple of times already. I'm really kind of blown away by it. It's very nice. It's called Notes on the Art of Poetry. I could never have dreamt that there were such goings-on in the world between the covers of books, such sandstorms and ice blasts of words, such staggering peace, such enormous laughter, such and so many blinding bright lights, splashing all over the pages in a million bits and pieces, all of which were words, 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 and each of which were alive forever, in its own delight and glory, and oddity and light.
Thank you.
My poem I wrote myself, and it's part of a song. It's called The World. It goes like this. The air is filled with smoke, makes me start to choke. The sky is always gray, a lot has changed today. We can go on like we were. We cannot go on like we were. Oh no, we cannot go on like we were. The people are tired of being lied to. More people are dying of more diseases. We go to hospitals, they only make us sick. If we did right, maybe we could stay healthy. The cops, they won't protect us. They call us honey. They're only revenue agents. They take our money. We keep on giving, they keep on taking. If we wake up, maybe we could adjust it. What seems to be is not what is. What really is, we must find out. We have our hearts set on making money. Poor people get stepped on. They have no money. We can't live with it. We can't live without it. If we could share, maybe we wouldn't need it. We've been told by several prophets that life on earth is going to change. If we keep on wasting our land away, the earth's surface will be rearranged. The forests are shrinking, giving less O2. The level of O2 sinking, sun makes less ozone. Hole in the layer is getting bigger. Stop cutting trees, maybe, can save our atmosphere. What seems to be is not what is. What really is, we must find out. Our soil so depleted of vital minerals. Without them, our immune system is doomed to break down. So some get cancer and some get other plagues. If we found right, maybe we'd get our health back.
I'm reading from my hymnal, a poem by Sidney Smith called Recipe for a Salad. To make this condiment, your poet begs the pounded yellow of 2 hard-boiled eggs. 2 boiled potatoes passed through kitchen sieve, smoothness and softness to the salad give. Let onions, atoms lurk within the bowl, and half suspected animate the whole. Of mordant mustard add a single spoon. Distrust a condiment that bites so soon. But deem it not, thou man of herbs, a fault to add a double quantity of salt. And lastly, over the flavored compound toss a magic soup spoon of anchovy sauce. Oh, green and glorious, oh, herbaceous treat, to tempt the dying anchorite to eat. Back to the world he'd turn his fleeting soul and plunge his fingers in the salad bowl. Serenely full, the emperor would say, Fate cannot harm me, I have dined today.
About 2 years ago, I realized that I did not appreciate poetry, and I wanted to do something about it. And there was a place in Manhattan called a Poetry House. So I went over from Elizabeth, New Jersey to Manhattan one afternoon and visited this place and went to get some help on how to appreciate poetry. And they showed me a book by Stephen Fry, which was very, very helpful. In the meantime, I was browsing in this poetry house, and I found a very thick anthology of Tang Dynasty Chinese poetry. And it was bilingual. It had the Chinese on the left side of the page and the English on the right side of the page. And it really caught my attention because I was already trying to learn some Chinese anyway. So there was a place called, oh, never mind what it is, but anyway, I ordered that book. I got that copy of that Tang Dynasty poetry. And it was really fun to look at some of the, read the poems, and then look for some of the Chinese words that were in the translations. And quite often I could correlate them. And later on, I just acquired early this year, or late last year, a book called Push Open a Window, and it's contemporary poetry from China. And I'd like to share one poem that really kind of touched me because of the fact that my father never drank beer with me. This poem was written, by the way, by Wang Jiaxing, who was born in 1957. It's called Drinking with His Son. And by the way, I don't drink anymore. What ambitions does a man past 50 still hold? His dream is but to sit and drink a glass of beer. With his long estranged grown-up son, they clink their glasses together. This is the way they hug. It is also how they are reconciled. Then they say nothing. As the son gets up for another glass, the father stares blankly as the foam on the rim slips to the bottom of his glass.
Well, this isn't the one that I really wanted to read because I left mine at home. This is by Wendell Berry, but it's fairly close to the one I was telling Lucy in the car. It's called The Larger Circle. In fact, I think what I had is either before or after this. We clasp the hands of those that go before us, and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms, and the larger circle of lovers, whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures, passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance, to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it, except in fragments.
Well, thanks to my high school English teacher, I have the prologue to Canterbury Tales in Middle English memorized. But I found this rather ironic poem in my hymnal, so I'll read this instead. It's a short panegyric, in parentheses, oratory, by Mark Strand. Now that the vegetarian nightmare is over, and we are back to our diet of meat and deep in the sway of our dark and beautiful habits, and able to speak with calm of having survived, let the breeze of the future touch and retouch our large and hungering bodies. Let us march to market to embrace the butcher and put the year of the carrot, the month of the onion behind us. Let us worship the roast or the stew that takes its place once again at the sacred center of the dining room table.
Spoken like a true vegetarian.
Are you vegetarian?
Yes.
Okay. That's the irony. And are you available in coffee hour to recite the Canterbury?
Yes. Memorized.
I haven't come prepared. I didn't know we were going to do playing poetry today, but speaking about an American tragedy, I remember a song. It was the time we lost the two Kennedy brothers and Martin Luther. And song goes something like, and they caught the last train to the coast. The three men I admire most, they caught the last train to the coast the day the music died.
I'd like to add this to the vegan poem. This is called the Vegan Piggy Poem. I wrote this. This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had roast beef. This little piggy had none because he was vegan. This little piggy went wee, wee, wee all the way home because the vegan piggy told him how piggies are tortured on factory farms.
Point me? Well, my favorite poem is one that probably everyone knows, Invictus by William Henley.
Yes.
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the foul clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I just love it for the bravado of it.
He wrote that the night before surgery, by the way.
Yes, he had a really rough life.
As it turns out, this isn't a poem at all, but a quotation by Mary Sarton. Still, I first encountered it in poetic form, and it sounds like poetry to me. I would like to believe when I die that I have given myself away like a tree that sows seeds every spring and never counts the loss, because it is not loss, it is adding to future life. It is the tree's way of being, strongly rooted perhaps, but spilling its treasure on the wind.
This one I found in the hymnal. A poem should be motionless in time as the moon climbs, leaving, as the moon releases, twig by twig, the night-entangled trees. Leaving, as the moon behind the winter leaves. Memory by memory, the mind. A poem should be motionless in time as the moon climbs. For all the history of grief, an empty doorway and a maple leaf. For love, the leaning grasses and two lights above the sea. A poem should not mean, but be. And that's by Archibald MacLeish.
Here's one called How to Eat a Poem. By the way, if you ever are in a bookstore, this is probably one of the best compilations of poetry that I've ever found. It's called Reflections on the Gift of a Watermelon Pickle, and you can use it with kids that are 6 years old on up to 90. How to eat a poem. Don't be polite. Bite in. Pick it up with your fingers and lick the juice that may run down your chin. It's ready and ripe now whenever you are. You do not need a knife or a fork or a spoon or plate or napkin or tablecloth, for there is no core or stem or rind or pit or seed or skin to throw away. Sounds like Shel Silverstone.
Okay. One more.
This one's shorter. I wrote this myself, and it's part of a song too. It's called Be Yourself. If someone told you to get a haircut, you don't have to do it. If someone told you you're a lady, you don't have to prove it. You don't have to play the role that others tell you to. You don't need their orders to tell you how to live. Be yourself. Be no one else. If you want to be a housewoman, then go ahead and be one. Or if you want to be a businessman or a businesswoman, then go ahead and have fun. There's nothing stopping you from being the real you. You just make up your mind and be the individual kind. Be yourself. Be no one else.
I like that.
want to thank you for making this time poetic, because for me that's a familiar thing, your voices, a church congregation, but going into a place I didn't think was possible, hearing someone talk about a song, hearing someone read a poem they wrote, hearing these sounds, beautiful sounds from your voices today. It's very lovely, very lovely. And if you have other poems you'd like to read, get a friend, read it to him, read it to her. Please join me in singing this song that's printed in your service, just from our seats. You might know how this goes. I'll sing it once, and then we'll all sing it twice. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, by this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, by this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, by this we live. Amen.
Let us read together our mission statement. This church provides a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for our lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassion to support each other in our spiritual searches.
Benediction today by Tim Gutherson. When I die, I want a jukebox for a tombstone and leave my friends rolls of quarters.
Stand if you're able and join hands if you are willing.